Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today for the TechCourt Elevate workshop series. Today we're going to be going over filmmaking for entrepreneurs. I'm Evan.
And I'm Ivan, and I'm so glad to have you guys here.
Yeah, we're so excited to get working with you guys today. We're going to be going over the basics of, assembling a script, building a storyboard, all of the pre-production that goes into making a film. Then we're going to break out and actually turn this space into a studio set, show you how to work with some of the hardware that filmmakers use every day.
And lastly, we'd like to invite you to follow along and dive into the editing process as we use Chroma Key to place a subject into any environment imaginable.
Let's get started.
The skills demonstrated today are applicable to filmmakers at any level. In fact, both of us are business majors with little to no professional film education, and we were able to use these same techniques and apply them to our project of our very own. Here's the final result.
Hey, cheer up.
Shouldn't have gone like that.
Yeah, it was too bad about Mark, but what can you do? He played his part.
He was the only reason we even got close.
Like I said, he played his part. Some of us have big roles, others have tiny roles. It's like a pawn in chess. Some pieces have to be sacrificed.
What the hell are you going on about?
Man, look, think about it this way. Some extra moolah for us.
Hey, that's enough! Cool it! Calm down! Enough! You two! Oh, enough! Bunch of amateurs! Jesus!
Silva.
You have it?
Yeah, we got it, but that intel you gave us was far from solid. Things went a little haywire.
Each of you knew what you're getting into. What did you think with the take this big? There would be a few bumps in the road? Come on, Silva, this isn't your first run around.
Yeah, that actually got me thinking of any other surprises that might be coming our way.
So you're thinking again?
We must be full of hot air these days.
Do you have the drive?
Does Dorothy have ruby slippers? Of course I got it.
Listen, my clients are accelerating the timeline. I need to know the names of those prospects and how much we stand to gain.
No. This whole plan seems sketchy from the get-go. The drive only moves when I see the money.
Like I said, we're accelerating the timeline.
Who's we?
Listen, Silva, I need those names now, or I won't be able to protect you gentlemen.
It's pretty rich coming from someone who lives in a Faraday cage.
There's a lot you don't know about this one. There's already some thugs on their way to make your acquaintance, and my neck's on the line too. You gotta do the right thing now.
What's going on, man?
What he said.
We gotta go. There's been a change in plans. There's a couple of thugs coming our way.
Bug out time already? The fun never ends here. Come on, you clowns. Time to go.
Grab that drive. Let's go.
Hey, that was great. That brings up a lot of great memories. The best part about that little short film is we did everything in under 10 hours with the equipment we're about to show you right now, some friends, and a little bit of creativity.
So let's get started.
All right, so when you're beginning your filmmaking process, you'll probably write a script. And then another thing that's really important, that's essential if you're having a lot of people working on your film, is to really kind of think about a storyboard. This can be simple. It can be hand-drawn sketches. You can do computer-designed mock-ups, throw together a PowerPoint or something like that. Any way that you can visualize the story that you're about to tell. It's great to record the shots, the angles, the time of day, who's going to be in that scene, the camera movement, anything like that. It's just a great way to be organized and visually lay out what you're going to do when you actually go on set.
All right, so next we're going to be talking about the different types of shots and angles. For this, I'd like to bring out my camera to demonstrate. First, we have the extreme close-up. This is typically a macro shot. It's used to focus on really, really close subjects. It's usually a very intimate shot, usually almost like a microscope. Next is just the close-up. Close-ups are typically done on a subject's face, whether it be their eyes or their mouth. Again, it's meant to be a rather intimate shot, kind of up close and personal with the audience. Next would be the medium shot. The medium shot is usually used for dialogue. It's where the body is cropped from the waist up to the head. And again, it's meant to have more of a conversational feeling to it. Next is the long shot. Long shots are typically done with telephoto lenses. It's usually to capture scenes such as like a football field for sports, or in a movie it'd be like a battlefield from far away, as you would see two armies approaching one another. And then lastly, we would have the long shot, the extreme long shot. The extreme long shot would be almost like an aerial, typically the shot of like a helicopter up in the air looking down at the ground below it. I'm going to pass it on to Evan with the angles.
Thanks. So we're starting off with the eye level shot, the eye level angle, and that's basically when the camera is right parallel with the subject's eyes. And this has the effect of bringing the viewer into the scene because they feel like they're basically interacting with the subject of the film. The next shot we're going to be talking about is the high angle shot, and that's basically when the camera is put at a high angle and looking down at a subject. It makes the subject look small, it can give you a miniature effect, and essentially it might be used when you want to make a subject feel weak or unpowerful. The low angle shot does the exact opposite. The camera is positioned low toward the ground, looking up at the subject, and this has the effect of making the subject look powerful or strong. So look for it next time you're watching a superhero film. Next, the bird's eye view is basically a top-down angle looking over a scene. You might track a subject through a busy street or through a crowd, but essentially the camera is positioned up on a crane looking down at a 90-degree angle from the sky. The Dutch angle is any time the camera is tilted on its axis 45 degrees or more. It has the effect of basically jarring the subject, jarring the viewer, and giving some intensity to the scene and a little bit of confusion as well. So look for these in the films that you're watching and try to fit them into your own work as well. Awesome, now let's take a quick look at some of the camera movements that are commonly seen in film. There's of course the static shot where nothing in the frame is moving, your camera is stationary. But if you want to spice things up and really draw in your viewer, move the camera in any combination of ways that you're seeing listed on screen. You can push in to the subject, You can pan around the subject, or you can tilt the camera from up to down, and any combination, and this will really draw people in, and it'll give you some really creative options to tell your story.
Now let's take it to our colleague Victoria, who's going to teach us about the rules of composition. Victoria, take it away.
Next, we are talking about the rules of composition. So there's 4 basic rules I'll go over, which is the rule of thirds, balance and symmetry, leading lines, and depth of field. So the rules of composition aren't necessarily rules. All rules are meant to be broken. The rules of composition are meant to help you think about how you are guiding the audience's eyes across the frame. So, with that said, let's dive into our first rule. So our first rule is the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds is when you break up the frame into 9 equal sections with 2 vertical lines and then 2 horizontal lines. So you want to kind of try and put things on the lines instead of inside the squares, meaning you kind of want it on off-center to the left or slightly off-center to the right. You'd want to put your horizon line somewhere on the upper line or the bottom line. An eye level shot, the eyes usually fall somewhere right at that top horizontal line or that top third line. The reason you want to do this is because you generally want to avoid things being dead center. When you draw the audience's eyes to the left side first, their eyes immediately will travel towards the right and vice versa. The reason you want to avoid putting the main focal subject dead center is because when our eyes are drawn towards the center first, it's not clear what direction we're supposed to look after. So that's why the rule of thirds exists. It is very aesthetically pleasing to start from one side of the frame and end at the other. When you start in the middle, your eyes are not sure where to go, so therefore it ends up not moving and just looking at what's in the center. So our next rule is balance and symmetry, which oftentimes defies or opposes the rule of thirds. So a perfect example of someone who breaks the rule of thirds all the time is Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson's compositions are very centered, they're very staged, the characters are always usually in the middle, and they're always very balanced and symmetrical. So balance and symmetry are more concepts and less rules. Balance and symmetry refer to just how balanced the frame is, meaning how much action or focus are you having on a certain side of the frame compared to the other side. Symmetry is basically kind of comparing the 2 sides of the frame, how different one is to the other, or how similar they are to each other. So balance and symmetry, again, it doesn't mean you have to have a balanced frame. It just is a concept for you to think about whether or not you want your audience focused in on a certain spot, or do you want them panning their eyes across the whole composition. Next are leading lines. So leading lines are basically environmental cues in the shot that are pointing the audience's attention towards something. So it could be an arm pointing towards something, or an eye gaze that's pointing towards something. It could be physical lines throughout the environment, like lane lines on a road. Anything that is drawing, literally or invisibly drawing lines towards the subject or towards what you want the audience's attention to go. Lastly is depth of field. So depth of field refers to how much of the environment, background, midground, and foreground, that is in focus. So a wide depth of field means all of it is in focus. You can clearly see the background, the middle ground, and the foreground. A narrow depth of field means usually only 1 or maybe 2 of those are in focus. So you see the foreground really clearly, but the background is blurred, for instance. Or it could be the opposite, where the background is in focus and the foreground isn't.
Thanks, Victoria. Now that we've gone over the conceptual side of filmmaking, let's go into creating our own interview studio setup.
All right, let's get started.
Here is all the equipment we will be using for our interview. We have a tripod, 2 LED video lights, and our camera of choice will be the Canon EOS RP. Starting us off will be our tripod. Unhinge all 3 clasps at the bottom of the tripod and turn all 3 bottom knobs to loosen the tension. Slide the tripod legs up to the desired length. Secure the knobs back into place and extend the legs outwards. Make sure to position the tripod in a firm and stable position. Next, we will be mounting the camera to the tripod plate. Use the screw at the top of the plate and securely tighten it to the bottom of the camera like so. Once secured, the camera should look like this. Slide the plate onto the tripod until you hear a faint click and the camera is good to go. Next, let's set our lights for our subject. Start with the stands and turn the bottom knob to loosen the tension. Slide the main shaft up until the legs extend and tighten the bottom knob. Once the stand is secured, retrieve the LED lights from their carrying case. Place the light on the shaft and tighten the knob on the side until firmly secured. Next, retrieve the 2 power cables from the carrying case. One should be for connection to a power outlet and the other should be to connect directly to the light source. Connect both cables together and plug the small power jack into the back of the LED light. Connect the other end to a power outlet. Make sure to open the 4-way barn doors to allow the light to pass through and turn on the switch to confirm a current is running through. Just like that, you have set up an LED light to get that cinematic lighting for your subject. Now let's just position our subject in front of our camera. We will have our subject sitting here comfortably on a chair. Turn on the camera and position the subject in the frame. I would recommend using the rule of thirds when framing your shot for an interview. As you can see here, I am positioning my subject along vertical lines. Lining up the subject along these crash points allows for more interest from the audience. Next, let's set up our lights to properly set up our subject. Since we are working with 2 lights, we are going to have to focus our key light and our fill light. First, start with the key light. Take the first light and bring it to the left side of the camera. We're going to raise the light until it is taller than our subject, and then we are going to tilt the light down at a 45-degree angle. Make sure to bring the brightness up to 100% for our key light. Now that we have our key light ready, let's prepare our second source of light. Our second source will be our fill light. Position this light on the right side of the camera facing the subject. Make sure to keep the height of the fill light the same level as the subject. The angle of the light is going to be completely parallel to our upright subject. Lastly, we are going to adjust our brightness to about 50% as this is meant to soften any harsh shadows created by the key light. Awesome! You have just set up proper lighting for your subject, but you're not quite done yet. Now that you have proper lighting, you will need to adjust your camera settings to properly match your lighting environment. We will need to change the aperture and ISO to fit the shot. Ideally, we would like to keep a low aperture to create the bokeh effect. This is the natural blur that is created between the subject and the background. This effect adds a cinematic element to the shot and will improve your overall production quality. Now that our f-stop has been adjusted, our subject may look a little bit bright. We can correct this by bringing down our ISO value. Wow, now your subject is looking better than ever. Just to recap, here's a comparison with no lighting versus having proper lighting. Look at the difference. Just like that, you are ready to film your very own professional interview.
And just like that, we've created a professional-looking interview setup using nothing more than a camera and some lighting adjustments. Now that we've got into set production, let's take a turn and focus on post-production. Let's get started. I'm going to begin by dragging my green screen clip onto my timeline. And I'm first going to start with the opacity effect right here and select the pen tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mask out our subject, because as you can see right here on the edges, we have these little shadows. That's because my lighting wasn't set so properly, but we don't need to worry about that because all the presentation is happening in the middle of the mask. So, just like that, we cut out our subject and you have created your own mask. Make sure to also play back your clip because you don't want to have any actions go outside of the mask here. You can see that it's very close here, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and everything looks good further from here. So now we're ready for the Ultra Key effect. Head over to your Effects tab and search for the Ultra Key. Drag it onto your clip and make sure to head over to the options. The first thing we're going to do is take the color picker and select the green screen on the subject. Boom. Just like that, we already have a key. But it's not so clean yet. So we're going to see it get better once we get through the settings. First, let's set the output from the composite to the alpha channel. And the alpha channel will actually show you the mask of what's being carried out. So everything in white will stay there and everything black is gone, as you can see. Definitely on the bottom we have some whites, but that means that they're not keyed out properly. And so that's why we're going to have to dive into these settings. Here we have the transparency, the highlights, the shadows, and the pedestal. First off, we're going to start off with the transparency settings. You basically want to increase this as much as possible without going too far. If you do increase this too much, what you'll see will happen is that you begin to bite into your subject, and that's not what we want. Next, we're going to work on the shadows. We want to bring them down to remove the stuff in the background, but also the shadows come back into my subject right here, which is pretty dark. So again, we're going to have to do the exact same thing as with the transparency, and we want to decrease that as much as possible without biting into our subject. While you are changing these options, make sure to change the movement in your shot. It could be that sometimes your keying looks well in one frame, but messes up in another frame. As you can see here, my subject's hair has been bitten into, so I will quickly correct that. So double check every now and then. So finally, we're going to work on the pedestal. This is going to make sure that we can bring down the whites here and fix the background. As you can see, the blacks and the shadows kind of lay on top. So this is really the last value that we have to go through. Now, let's just switch our output back from our alpha channel back to our composite and see our almost final result. All right, now that it's all done, let's go back to the assembly tab. And now let's drag our actual background into our timeline. So right now I placed it on top, so let's move our key on top. And just like that, we have our working green screen. Only problem is that on the bottom we have a little bit of some bad cutting. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the editing tab. We're going to move our bottom background to the side, go to the effects tab, and we're going to increase our scale just so we can get rid of that ugly cut. Move our background back in, and just like that, we have completed our chroma key tutorial.
Thanks so much for tuning into this TechCore Elevate workshop series on filmmaking for entrepreneurship. We hope that we were able to give you a little bit of theory, some technical skills on how to work with equipment, and some exposure to the editing room.
From all of us at TechCore, we thank you.